Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Between Lines podcast with Chris and Aiden. Championship games happened over the weekend. My mind's kind of in a blender. I will say, Chris and I are recording in the evening for the first time. But my mind's in a blender for the sole reason of these championship games. Chris actually 100% predicted the Super Bowl. Great on him. We'll let him take over in a second here. But I just wanted to point out I took the exact two opposite teams as Chris. Was not trying to be different. I genuinely believed in these other teams. But, the saying of that's the way the cookie crumbles. These teams were just more dominant on paper. But we'll dive into. I'll go back into my review after Chris talks about why he picked these teams and how they executed. So, Chris, you want to? Let's start with the NFC, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. So, first off, I mean, we got to welcome everyone to Between the Lions After Dark for the first
Heck yeah,
recording. It's
baby.
actually, I mean, I guess the original ones were in the afternoon, but this is definitely the latest. It would
Yeah,
actually be cool one
yeah.
time if we just did like a late night stream or something, but that's a ways down the
Like
road.
Fortnite.
Um, yeah, dude.
Play
Yeah,
Fortnite.
um, I remember I said to you off air a couple weeks ago, just like in the gym or something, that like I actually really like the Eagles. And when
Yeah,
we
you did.
finished making our original bracket picks, I wish I had switched to the Eagles. I don't know if I mentioned that, but like internally, I was like, I think I like the Eagles a little bit better than the Lions, and in
Yeah,
this scenario, and yeah, obviously these past two games. Um, I thought for sure the Eagles were going to beat the Commanders. I thought that the Buffalo game was a little bit more of a toss-up. I just think the Commanders are a really nice story. They had a really good season and they're a good team. The Eagles are just dominant on so many levels. Like the only question with the Eagles is quarterback, and Jalen Hurts isn't even a bad quarterback. So it's like, in my opinion, like I've been there before. They have at worst, a top 5 player in the league in Saquon Barkley. Like, I think, you
he
have to
might be
put him
top
as a
three,
top.
Chris.
That's what I'm saying, at worst. Like, he's gonna be
It's
offensive
actually
player of the
crazy.
year. He's up there with, like, the quarterback for the best players in our game.
Yeah,
He's
in
a
terms
beast.
of value as well, though.
Dude, I mean, like, I've been saying to you, like, you can't stop him, you can't even contain him. And the
Yeah.
first play, they run a toss off the left side, and he houses it. It's like
Yep.
it's
But
incredible to
I
watch.
just, yeah, exactly. But Barkley's whole debate. I know we bring up the Giants a lot. I bring up the Giants a lot, but all media does as well. And this is Barkley's whole point was, dude, I am the most valuable player on this team right now. That's what he's saying to Joe Shane, and Joe Shane goes, "Nah, I got bigger fish to fry or whatever." I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Right? And every Giants fan knew that if he let him go, he didn't. Joe Shane doesn't deserve a job. I don't know what's gonna happen. That's a whole other story. But in terms of Barkley, like Chris just said, I'd say you have Mahomes, you have Josh Allen, you have Lamar Jackson, and there's Barkley. I say he's right there because in terms of what he brought to the Eagles this year, he was the Eagles. Okay, I mean the Eagles defense was probably the best in the league as well, but I'm talking about that offense became entirely different because of him and that offensive line, obviously.
Yeah, and the two biggest ads that the Eagles made this offseason were one being Saquon Barkley and two being Vic Fangio. Sure they drafted really well,
Yeah,
adding Cooper DeJean and Kenyon Mitchell. And over the years, they've added a lot of pieces on defense like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, and they picked up Zach Bond as a special teamer. He went all pro this year.
yeah,
And Nolan Smith's had a really good playoffs. And you keep rattling off these guys, but none
yep,
of this matters without Vic Fangio being in the building, because last season they had mostly the same defense. They had um,
yep,
Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Darius Slay, Reed Blankenship, Kobe
yep,
Dean. All these guys were pretty much there last year, and the Eagles got bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and their defense was not good.
yep,
So Sirianni, he gets a lot of heat for a number of reasons. He goes out, identifies that their biggest need is on the defense, and brings in one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And the Eagles have the best defense in the league. Like, it hasn't really been close for a while, especially in the
yeah,
playoffs. The Bills haven't had a good defense, against Mahomes, but this is another level of defense that I think the Chiefs will have to see. And they deal with everything really well, so I'm not super worried about it. And
yeah. Yeah.
Like,
We'll have a long. Sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt you. I
you're
was just saying
good.
we're gonna have a long conversation about the Super Bowl because I don't know. We'll talk about this in the
Well,
future,
there's a
but
lot of matchups
there's
to
so
look
much to
at.
dissect.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great matchups for sure. But I wanted to say though, Chris, about the Eagles, taking the NFC. I had the Lions purely for the fact of what your reasoning was for Philly of terms of all out, like all around roster, right? And I know Lions kept losing more and more players even after I made the pick of them winning the entire NFC. But I saw that in Detroit, and obviously the reason why Detroit went out against Washington was because of turnovers from Jared Goff, honestly. But that Detroit defense wasn't always phenomenal, but it was able to get the job done. And when you lose like seven starters or something like that to injury, of course you're not going to play your best ball, regardless of who your coach is or anything like that. Um, so yeah, I think that's why Detroit struggled, and Philly, you know, got it easy in the NFC Championship, and yeah, I picked the Commanders. But I believed in Jaden Daniels to tear apart that defense. But like Chris said, that defense is absolutely incredible. And Daniels didn't play an awful game until that pick. To be fair, there were four turnovers by the Commanders. Three of them were fumbles by skill position players, or I believe maybe one kick return fumble as well. I don't remember, but I remember three fumbles by skill position
Yeah,
players, and
McNichols
Daniels threw a
fumbled on a
pick at
kick
the end.
return.
McNichols. It
Yeah.
was yes, it was McNichols. That's what it was. But those are three turnovers, not on Jaden Daniels. He protected the ball well. I mean, for a rookie, he had a phenomenal game in an NFC Championship game, in my opinion. Um, I just like Chris said, the Washington all around roster is nothing compared to what Philly is loaded with, and even like some of the Phillies bench players could, I mean, on defense and offense, could probably start for Washington. Some of these other teams that were in the playoffs. Um, so yeah, props to Nick Sirianni. And I hate saying this to all my friends that are Philly fans and being a Giants fan myself, but the Eagles have been so dominant in the past 3, 4 years, ever since they got Jalen Hurts, really. And Sirianni, adding Sirianni was just huge. Like Chris said, their biggest weakness last year was defense, and Baker Mayfield shredded them apart in the playoffs last year. So what does Sirianni do? He brings in Vic Fangio because he's like, I need this to be main focus because we have on paper absolute studs on defense, and they weren't doing anything this year. So he brings in Vic Fangio and probably becomes the best defense, like Chris just said. So I don't know. This is good. I'm still. I don't know. I just have so many thoughts on the Super Bowl that I want to bring up, but we'll wait for the like next podcast.
One last thing on the NFC side, then we can cover the AFC, the more interesting close game. I know this game ended in like a three-score blowout where the Eagles put up 55, but there was a time when this game was, within reach for the Commanders.
Like
But
8 points,
every,
yeah.
every time that it got a little close, they turned the ball over. So you can't turn the ball over four times. And Philly was just so good. And it's also just like you start the game with if you're the Commanders with an 18 play drive, but you only get 3 points. You're like, all right, we wore the defense
Yeah,
down. We drove downfield, 3 points. It's all right. It's the first drive. Saquon houses it on the first play, demoralizing. You have another long drive, and then you only get 3 points again. So when you're not turning, threes into sixes, and you're turning the ball
yeah.
over, it snowballs quickly, and that's what happened. So I have no doubt that the Commanders will build on this year that they had. It's confirmed that Cliff Kingsbury is staying with them. He's not taking a coaching job anywhere.
That's huge.
It's
That
another
is
year.
huge.
It's another year for Daniels to develop in that system. Another year. They probably need some more like difference maker weapons on offense, like a really good
Yeah,
receiver
but I
next to
think
Terry and like I'm not really a fan of the running back tandem of Eckler and Brian Robinson. I think Eckler's old and Brian Robinson is really slow. I think you could get more dynamic there. And you probably bring back Ertz because he was a solid tight end, but overall, I think you're just looking for some difference makers on offense.
yeah. Well, just we can keep talking about this because we still have time. We're very early in the podcast. Just want to talk. I want to talk quick about Washington. What you just said. Making additions based off of what Daniels just did this year, there are going to be free agents that want to go play. They just went to the NFC Championship. There are going to be free agents that want to say, I want to go catch passes from Jaden Daniels, whether it be T. Higgins or whatever. I don't know. I'm just making examples out here, obviously. And obviously, you have a lot of open positions on that defense that you need covered. More free agents. Okay, that's quite obvious that people are going to want to play for the Commanders in the future. And again, as a Giants fan, that's very aggravating to me because you have Washington and you have Philly, two organizations that a lot of free agents are going to want to go to purely for the fact of what they've been able to create. But yeah, just sticking on Washington mainly. Dan Quinn, phenomenal job. He coached the Falcons for a while and took them to Super Bowl. He's a great kind of bounce back coach. I guess you could say how we talked about that for a while in the earlier season. Um, yeah, I think that Washington has a very, very bright future in front of them. I agree with you, Chris. I think there's definitely some tweaks they can make, maybe some offensive line additions. Brian Robinson might not be the answer. Obviously, Eckler's more of a veteran help. Um, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of free agents. Like I could tell, there's going to be a lot of people that are very interested in going to Washington, and building something. And Washington probably, I mean, I feel like they already have maybe, but they probably solidify themselves as definitely the second best team in the division. As bold, I don't know if that's bold of me to say with Dallas there,
And
but
Dallas
I
stinks.
don't know.
Yeah, you don't gotta worry about that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a whole other episode to talk about. They let Mike McCarthy go just to
Chris.
bring in Brian Schottenheimer. Like, are you kidding me? That's not even a serious
Chris.
it's not even a serious move, honestly. Like, it's insulting to the fans, insulting to all those people who spend a ton of money to go to Jerry's World. You bring in, and no disrespect to Brian Schottenheimer. I mean, he was a former Jets offensive coordinator, but that's not a real candidate if you're gonna let your head coach
Yeah,
go
he's
to just
not.
promote the offensive coordinator. If you're gonna
No,
let Mike McCarthy out of
I
the
agree with
building,
you.
you have to go get one of those top targets, and they didn't do
Yeah,
that. So I don't
I
think
agree
you
with
gotta
you,
worry
Chris.
about Dallas, and they have no money really, so I don't think you gotta worry
I
about
agree with
them.
you. That's just a great introduction. Dallas stinks.
They do, I mean,
Yeah, we'll move
honestly,
on.
they
Yeah,
do.
go ahead.
No,
No,
I
I know. That's a whole thing.
look, I
I
mean,
I can't wait for the off season. I can't
it was
wait.
a lost season with Dak going out, but
Yeah.
even if he's in there, I don't think they make the playoffs.
No, and if they do, they're out the first round.
Like,
But
yeah, so
um, yeah, I agree with you. We'll segue over to the AFC real quick. Um,
I know
but
there's a
yeah,
lot to talk
tons
about
of off
here,
season talk.
so
But yeah, with this AFC game, AFC Championship game, Chris, you go first because I want to gather my words real
yeah,
quick
I
because
was
there's
gonna
a
say,
lot I want to
I know
dissect.
you got a lot to let out because I
Yeah,
think
because you picked the Kansas City, I picked Buffalo.
yeah, I mean, what transpired was pretty much what I expected. Back and forth, arguably the two best quarterbacks in our league. You know, if you want to talk about Lamar or Burrow, maybe being that second guy, but Allen. You know, they're all one B to Mahomes right now, or two to Mahomes. Yeah, so that's a discussion for another day. But it just the game started out. It didn't look like the Chiefs could be stopped. You know, they were moving it on every possession they had in the first half, except for that Mahomes fumble. That killed them there. Then we get to the second half, and Buffalo's defense tightens up a little bit. They get two stops, and they get two touchdowns on fourth down. So you're thinking in the back of your head, like, "Oh my God, is this the year the Bills are actually going to do it?" Because they're getting all these, they're executing. I talked about the close games with the Chiefs last week and why they're so good in the close games, aside from external factors. But you have to execute in those close moments, and the Bills were doing it. You know,
Yep.
James Cook goes airborne and fully extends like Michael Jordan in Space Jam for that sick touchdown. And then fourth down again, um, Allen finds Shakir in the back of the end zone. I believe it was Shakir. He was completely uncovered. It was a bust in the
Oh no, it
defense.
was Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel.
Okay, yeah, Samuel. And then, he throws out that heave to Mac Hollins. I mean, Mac Hollins out of nowhere, like he's like a journeyman.
Yeah, that was a beautiful catch.
Josh Allen played a phenomenal game. And then I'll stick with the on-field stuff before I dive into some of the
Go
external
for it.
factors. But Mahomes, as he always does, puts his team in position to win the fourth quarter. They get the field goal from Bucker, and you're thinking to yourself, the Chiefs haven't been able to stop Josh Allen at all this second half, and there's plenty of time. Again, like I'm sure a lot of people were thinking, this is it. This is Josh Allen's moment. He slays the dragon, he exercises his demons, and he gets past the Chiefs. And all of a sudden, it's second and 10, and the Chiefs go cover zero, turn up the blitz a little bit. We get to third and 10, and I'm sitting there with my dad, and I'm like, "It's 4th and 10, and they haven't gotten anywhere." Like, I don't know if I would blitz again. Like, I might play coverage, and my dad's like, "No, you blitz them again." And they blitzed again.
You blitz him
They got
again.
to Allen. He heaved it up. Looked like there was no chance. Like, it looked like it was just a prayer, and Kincaid still could have caught
Yeah.
it. So, truly heartbreaking if you're a Josh Allen and a Bills fan. I don't have any, I don't feel
Quickly,
any.
quickly on that play though, Chris.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
I
no.
just before you make that last point, just one quick sentence. Um, not just for that play, but the entire game, and probably for the past maybe 5 6 seasons, and all 100% credit to Steve Spagnuolo. He's a phenomenal defensive coordinator.
Yeah, no, he absolutely is. He knows, what to run in certain situations. Like going cover zero against Josh Allen is really risky. Like obviously, for those of you who don't know, cover
Yeah,
zero is you're bringing one more man than the offense can blitz, and there's no safety help, there's no zone help. It's just straight man. And that's pretty easy to beat if you're running, if the quarterback identifies that at the line and you just run quick man beaters like slants or something like that, it's really not that hard to go against. You just have to recognize that it's
yeah.
coming. He ran cover zero on third down, and then fourth down, I don't know if it was cover zero
I
completely, but he still blitzed again. So you're right.
It
Credit to
was, it
Spags.
was, and I don't think Josh recognized it, Chris, like you just said.
Oh,
I think Josh was anticipating zone because of just the logic behind the play is it's 4th and 10. You're gonna play the first down line, and they didn't.
yeah.
Spags sent them all, and he was
Honestly,
amazing.
now that I think about it, like Josh Allen, when he has time, is one of the best players in the league. Like if you can rush him off his spot,
Yeah,
and the Chiefs did a really good job. I know Tony Romo mentioned it often during the broadcast of containing the pocket and not letting Josh get to the sideline where he can start
get
moving
out.
upfield
Yeah,
and then set his feet in fire. That's one of his best abilities is escapability and getting
right.
out of the pocket and setting up downfield. But you had guys like Charles Omenihu and George Karlaftis who are, they're not the fastest defensive ends, but their technique was so sound in the sense that they
Yep.
knew that they weren't going to get the sack. So you just contain, 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 and you just force him off his spot. But yeah, I don't
Yep.
think he was expecting cover zero, like in that instance or another blitz, it's 4th and 10. You're thinking they're gonna go coverage here, they want drop 7 or 8 guys, but no, they blitz. So Spagnuolo, great defensive coordinator for sure.
Yeah, well, I was gonna bring up a stat real quick too, because this is actually key for the Super Bowl, which I'll bring up more later. But Chiefs, I saw this on social media. I'm sure you probably saw this too. The past 18 playoff games, including Super Bowl games, Chiefs defense has never allowed a 100-yard rusher. Okay, the Bills probably wanted to rely on James Cook a little more, and James Cook did get a lot of great runs in there. Okay, but he didn't have 100 yards. Guess who else didn't have 100 yards? Joe Mixon. Guess who else didn't have 100 yards? Prime Derrick Henry on the Titans, Christian McCaffrey on the Niners in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs' defense is probably the most overlooked part of this team, and they've probably been the biggest factor every playoff game in the past 3 4 years, maybe. Um, it's the fact I talked to you and I both talked about it all year long. When Mahomes doesn't have to be relied on, that's the most dangerous team in the NFL. Mahomes, like Chris, I'll tell you right now. Can you give me a yes or no answer? Was there one massive play that stood out to you from Mahomes in that game?
I mean, the touchdown run was pretty solid, but
Okay, yeah,
there
the
wasn't
touchdown
no
run
like
I've talked about with my
there wasn't no
professor.
like
No,
hornet play from the Super Bowl against the 49ers, the
right.
first one where it was third and
That's
19 and
right.
they run that, up and out and he
I
flings it
meant,
to
I meant,
Tyreek.
uh, I meant, yes, for last week's game
Yeah, no,
against
yeah,
Buffalo.
no, I'm just saying like as a comparison, like there wasn't a play like that.
Oh, right, yeah, exactly. But I'm saying, like, I'm not saying he has to. It's the fact that he didn't need to.
I'll tell you
That's what makes
that.
Mahomes such a winner. Is that
Yeah, no, that's their offense right now. They don't fling it down the field like that
they don't have
anymore. They
yeah,
don't everything
right.
just looks so
It's
easy to them.
amazing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's like, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Uh,
No, I'll just jump in while you're thinking. It's just like there's no easy way to defend them because of the weapons they have. I know that a lot of these
Mhm.
guys are past their prime, like Hopkins and Hollywood, but they're still effective
Yeah,
at what they're asked to do. So, and you have
yeah,
the speed of Worthy and the elusiveness. Kelsey's not elusive, but
Yeah.
he's one of the best at finding the soft spot in his zone coverage, and
He's also a
he's
great
he's
blocker.
always there when Patrick Mahomes needs him. And Patrick Mahomes' legs were so
Yeah.
dynamic. Like I don't people don't give him enough credit as a runner. He knows when to take off. Kind of reminds me of Aaron Rodgers
Well,
back in his
yeah.
days with the Packers. Like he's not a run first quarterback, but he could still burn you if you're not looking at him.
Yeah. I was gonna say, um, Mahomes doesn't have to. Mahomes is what I call a winner. I've talked about this um, with my professor a lot about like what like the psychology of sports is and stuff like that. Mahomes, what we call a winner. Not that he wins everything, but he has a winner's mentality. So the dude treats every game like any game, right? And yeah, probably in Josh's head for a little bit of this game, there's a lot more on the line, right? Mahomes treats it like every other game. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to help the team out, whether it be I hand the ball off 40 times or I throw the ball 50 times. It doesn't matter. Whatever works for the team, he's okay with. He doesn't have to throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns every game. If he could have Pacheco and Kareem Hunt absolutely feast, which they maybe weren't doing entirely, but like you said, Chris, Mahomes' aspect of the legs got played in because the Bills completely forgot about that. Because when have we seen that from Mahomes at all this year? He has had that in the past, right? But nobody has considered that because of all the weapons they have on offense. I just this is a dynasty, Chris. I think you're absolutely correct when you said this. Um, Chris said, um, if they win the Super Bowl, they get the three-peat, they become the greatest dynasty of all time. I agree with him entirely, and people are going to debate with Tom Brady and Belichick, and that's a whole other story for when it happens. But three-peating in football has never happened before. Doing something for the first time ever has never happened before. Like something like this is just absolutely insane. He's the Michael Jordan of this league. Everybody is terrified of him. Basically, everybody's annoyed by him. Why? Because he doesn't stop winning. That's as simple as it gets for me.
Yeah, and I'll stand on that take. If they win next Sunday, I'll stand on that take probably for the rest of my life because I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again unless the Chiefs keep winning. But they're
Yeah,
gonna if they win Sunday, that's 3 in a row, and that's 4 in 5 years. Like, that's unbelievable for any
that's
professional sport,
insane.
and especially in modern sports, like, back in the old days of baseball, like, it's not as impressive because there was only a couple teams or, like, Bill Russell,
Right.
rest in peace with all those championships. It's not the same because there was only a couple teams in the league and the level of competition. Like, if you're doing it in the era of, like, the most talent that we've ever seen, especially in a sport like football, like it's so hard to repeat in football. It's such a physical game that like the chances that you make it to the end
Yeah.
this healthy are slim to none. I think if he does it, like he's gonna have 4 Super Bowls before he's 30. That gives him, plenty of
Yep.
time to get to Brady, and then
That gives him another
we
decade.
have a real debate on our hands of who's the greatest of all time. So we'll
Yeah.
have to see where it all ends up. I'm just trying to
You know what's interesting, Chris?
what's up?
Sorry, go ahead. Finish that last off. Finish that last off
No,
before I
I
change the
was just
subject real
gonna
quick.
say,
Go ahead.
like, I'm just appreciating. I know a lot of people don't care for the Chiefs, but I just think it's important to appreciate the greatness while we're watching it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I was just gonna add something because we just talked about you talked about longevity with Mahomes. Having 4 rings before 30, right? And we talk about like Tom Brady statistically, if you put his 20s and his 30s into like separate careers, and they're basically identical. Even his 40s for those like 3 or 4 years, whatever, were also very impressive. Um, Tom Brady didn't get hurt a lot. He didn't get hit a lot. Mahomes is taking a little more hits. Fair enough. I want to bring up there's a very interesting study that was done on Mahomes, and this is more. I'm an exercise science major. I love this kind of stuff. I'm very interested by it. Mahomes, there's a thing called torque in the spine. Mahomes' spine is actually structured like a lot more stronger than the average humans. Very similar to how an MLB pitcher's torque and spine is actually built. Even though he's a lot shorter than like an average MLB pitcher, which allows his body to turn his hips and waist more than the average human, which is why he has such great arm strength. And they were talking about the longevity of a career because of that. Because some of these quarterbacks, obviously, when they get older, throw their shoulder out, throw their arm out, kind of like a pitcher, if you would say, like with Tommy John surgery or something, because a pitcher can't go until he's 50 or something like that. But pitchers can go long if they have that correct spine and torque strength. Um, so yeah, Mahomes could easily just backing up to your point, Chris. Mahomes could play till he's 45 if he wanted to, purely from the fact of how much lower and mid body strength he has to throw a ball. Because I'd say about 75 to 80% of his throwing power is from his like low his tooth like below 2/3 half, not his arm, like very little of his arm. Um, I know it's a little off topic and stuff. I just want to bring that up because even the kind of game that we're describing right now, what Mahomes is playing, when he had Tyreek Hill, he was taking deep shots every game. That's not his game right now. Every pass is maximum 15 yards, maybe a 20-yard throw. Everything's underneath, check downs, because the defense is always so afraid of that. You forget that Tyreek's not even there anymore. You're just so afraid of his big arm. And that kind of strength being saved up for so long, he's going to have such a long career. I guarantee you, Chris, this is a bold take from me. I think he becomes the GOAT at the end of it all. It's so easy to me to just say that.
He's gonna be around a while, and I think he definitely has, all respect to Tom Brady. He has more, physical talent as a quarterback than Tom Brady. Tom Brady, his big thing was his cerebral capability, and that got him so far.
Yeah.
But, Mahomes has that and, the physical talent. So
He has
I
everything.
agree.
Yeah.
Like I think it's gonna be, it's gonna be the next LeBron Michael Jordan debate 100%. And I think if he gets to like 6, if he gets to 5 rings, then that's a real conversation, and then if he, gets that 6th and maybe that 7th, then, it's people are gonna
Yeah.
take firm stances, but, that's the thing about
Yeah.
sports, everyone's always gonna have an opinion, you're never gonna be able to 100% get anyone to agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know Chris has talked about Buffalo for a little bit. Josh Allen played a great game. I picked Buffalo. I thought this was the year finally. Um, in terms of who had a better game between Josh and Mahomes, I'd say they're pretty even. I maybe slightly edge it towards Josh purely for the fact that he had to play down a lot more. But Josh still he played correctly. He did everything he needed to do against Mahomes. The Bills team is not as complete as Kansas City. We talk about complete teams at how same that's how Philly dominated Washington. Kansas City, like Chris just said, with being prepared for the end of a game, right? Having the ball be put on you. The defense at times could not come up clutch, and I'm not saying that they should be able to, but I don't remember many times where they slowed down the Chiefs' offense enough, or got enough stops compared to what the Kansas City defense did to Buffalo. Um, so yeah, I'm not I you can't blame Josh at all. And there's not many of these AFC Championship games or playoff games against Mahomes where you can blame Josh. It's just either Kansas City puts the pressure on the Bills defense or um letting Mahomes just win the game, or having Mahomes get the ball last. It's not unlucky, but it's just I guess you could say it's unlucky for Josh, but it's just unfortunate that he has to go through this again. That
Yeah,
was my one comment for Buffalo.
well, as a Jets fan, I don't have any sympathy for them. Obviously, as a division rival, I'll acknowledge they're a really good team. I think they're really lacking, dynamic playmakers on offense other than Josh Allen
Yeah,
himself. James Cook too, he's a very good player, but your wide receivers can't be Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, and Keon Coleman. It's just not good enough. So we're gonna
yeah,
need another weapon. They have a really good offensive line, and Josh is their whole team. So he'll make do with what you give him, and they're always going to be in this position as long as he's their quarterback. They're always going to be in the playoffs, winning the AFC East. Like, I have no doubts about that. But we told you what was going to happen. We've been saying it, or at least I've been saying it. You know how these games go against the Chiefs, and I hate to go there, but like it's the reality. They are the beneficiaries of a lot of calls. So there's obviously
Yep.
two big ones. One of them I'm a little
Yeah, these are
uncertain
huge.
overall, but one of them I'm a little more, on the side that the Bills got screwed. The one I'm not, I think this might surprise people. The one I'm not sure about is the first down because I know the initial spot was the first down, but when you look at that replay angle, to me, he has the ball under
It's
the
over.
under the arm that's away from the first down marker. So that to me, that's where I think their logic was. Like you can't and the call in the field was that he was short. So I know they marked it first down and then they remarked it short. But to me, you can't physically see the ball. Like you just kind of and the yellow line is obviously not official. And then on the Xavier Worthy like miraculous catch, I think that should have been incomplete. I think enough of that ball hit the ground that it shouldn't have been a completed pass to either. So that's my thoughts. I know you were fuming during the game. You were fired up, probably like most of the people.
Yeah.
But I think incomplete, and I do think Josh Allen was short there. So
Look, look. Everybody is online saying, Chiefs for the rest for the Chiefs and rest versus Bills or whatever. It's to me. Yeah, sure. You could. There's always controversial calls in Kansas City games. Um, but I watched this game now. Like I really watched this game, and the Bills defense just couldn't do anything, dude. That's just plain and simple as it gets, regardless of how those calls go. The Bills defense doesn't stop Mahomes. That's as simple as it gets. Saying like, oh, Josh could have ran the timeout or whatever. Dude, there's 15 seconds on the clock. He's getting the ball down there. It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters, quite frankly. People are gonna disagree with that. I don't care. You can't beat him. It's as simple as it is. You can't beat him. Um, and I think the only two guys ever beat Mahomes in the playoffs were Brady and Joe Burrow. So until Joe Burrow comes back to the playoffs, I will be picking Mahomes forever.
you realize that's the way to go. I mean, it is the way to go. It's like picking against Michael Jordan. It's the same thing. Like
Yeah,
until it actually happens, there's no reason to make that pick just to try to be different or like stand out. Like it's okay to think Mahomes is going to win every single time he steps on the field. Like that's just the
yeah,
reality that we live in right now. And for these other
yeah.
contenders in the AFC, like
Chris, did you?
it's hard. I don't know what more the Bills have to do to get over this hump. I really don't.
No, it's got to be defensive additions, in my opinion. That's a whole nother breakdown I could do because I said to Chris, I don't know if I did say this to you actually, I don't remember, but I, I could you not kind of blame GM and coaching for not bringing defensive additions in or something like that? Could you not?
Well, they were kind of strapped with money from what I remember, like this past offseason. They got rid of
Yeah.
Diggs, they cut Trey White, they cut a couple other people. I don't know. And they don't draft incredibly well. Like I know they have,
Mm-mm.
Ed Oliver was a couple years ago when they were bad, and Russo is all right,
Yeah, he's good.
but they have no depth. Like
Well,
you
like so,
saw
like
Christian or
like
Benford
Edmonds.
went out, and then you saw Benford
Yeah,
went out, and Kyer Elam, who was a first
that's
round
what I'm
pick,
saying.
came in and he got absolutely torched. So it's like
Yeah.
they don't have a lot of depth.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, Chris. Is when you're in the AFC with guys like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes, and you have a guy like Josh Allen. You know that when you make the playoffs, Josh is going to perform. Okay, that's the least of your concerns at this point. The concern is how do I slow down, not stop, because you can't really stop any of those guys. Mainly Mahomes. How do I slow down one of these guys? Oh, let's get defensive additions. The Bills didn't. They don't have
They're also
anybody.
paying
They
a lot
actually
of money to
lost a
Von
lot.
Miller, so that doesn't
Exactly.
help.
Well, the other guy, I know he wasn't fantastic, but he's still like only 24, 25. He's on the Bears now, which is Trumaine Edmonds. He's a middle linebacker. I know he's probably going to be expensive when he left in free agency, but he was a guy that the Bills drafted at 19 years old, which is absolutely insane. I'm like, if you draft a guy like that, you got to give him a lot of years to develop, dude. And even 24, 25, like he is right now, he's still young for a player, and the Bears are probably going to get something out of him if the defense does well for that. like that's just an example I'm giving, Chris, is like you had so much talent and potential with all these guys that were there over the years, and you keep letting them go. Guys like Trey White, like you mentioned. I mean, Trey White didn't actually exactly come out great after those injuries, but it's fine. Like Ed Oliver's a great addition. Hopefully you keep him because you need him badly. Guy like Von Miller, yeah, great veteran leadership, but he's not like he's 2015 Von Miller. Um, yeah, the Bills got to find a solution to that defense. There's got to be I feel like it's got to be the linebacker or safety position, somebody that can just figure out Mahomes. I'm not saying they will, but just get a play or two. If you because like I said, Chris, or not like I said, but the fumble that Mahomes had, right? That's key points to get, number one. And number two, if you stop him one more time after that, you get a huge lead. Um, but they couldn't. So that's the reality of it. We have
I
to deal with
I
that.
actually think they did a decent job slowing him down because in the second they went into the fourth quarter with a lead because of the stops they were able to get in the third quarter. So I don't think that I agree that it could help to have some more like elite pass rushers probably, but I don't, it's just it's the margin for error is so slim against the Chiefs that you have to create more than one turnover, it feels like. And their one takeaway was Mahomes essentially dropping the football.
Well,
So
that's what
I
I'm
agree
saying,
with you in
Chris.
that sense, but I don't even think the Bills defense played that bad.
I don't know. I just think that they played the exact same way they played every AFC Championship game against Kansas City, which I'm not saying is bad. I'm just saying is it's the same, and do you have to amp it up a next level in order to compete with a guy like Mahomes? Which is why I'm so interested with what Philly does. I don't think Vic Fangio's had an incredible year. That's a whole nother conversation. Is who wins that battle? So we'll see because that's gonna be a great one. But the main focus of this podcast was going to be a couple of coaching hirings that we've talked about already, but Chris really wants to get involved with Aaron Glenn. He had a press conference, made a lot of strong points, addressed elephants in the room and stuff like that. I guess you could say. I'm gonna have Chris take it over here because he's gonna kind of as a Jets fan, he'll cover it as a fan and more of a analytical analysis kind of thing. So go ahead, Chris.
First off, as a fan, I don't know how you can't be fired up about Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji to an extent, but mostly Aaron Glenn, just based off of the way that he stepped up and just commanded the room. Like you don't see that too often from Jets coaches. You think about just Robert Saleh, even the last couple of years, like when he was hired as from the 49ers, we would always see him on the sideline, like screaming his head off, and he was this like rah-rah guy and he got to the Jets, and it's like something changed, and that person didn't exist anymore. There was no fire, there was
Yeah,
no passion. I don't know if you watched Hard Knocks 2 summers ago when the Jets were on
I
it,
did.
but it felt manufactured, passion that he was trying to put on for the cameras. He gave this stupid speech about, like, how the only bird that chases an eagle is a crow, and that the eagle soars up all the way to the sky, and then the crows suffocate, fall, and die. And it was like an analogy that the Jets were going to have to soar away from the crows and their haters. It was really stupid. But like Aaron Glenn
Yeah.
just gets in there and he says, "We're the freaking New York Jets. We're built for this shit." And it's like, no bullshit, excuse my language, just pure authenticity, just pure realness, and I think that's something that's so important as an NFL coach, like, players are not stupid, like, they'll see right through you if they think you're a phony, like, what do you think those Jaguars players are saying right now when they saw Liam Cohen go Duval in the camera and make that stupid face? Like, they're probably like, "This is our coach? Really?" I'm like, "No disrespect." I hope
Reminded me of Adam Gase.
I hope that Liam Cohen, and Trevor Lawrence figure it out, whatever. But like the players need to buy in to the person so that the football stuff will work. If they don't believe in Aaron Glenn as a person, it's not going to work on the field. And I think that the way that he just walked in there and commanded the entire room, he was assertive. He clearly laid out his plan, and he didn't cater to the media, which is something that we've seen
Right.
too much of from the coaches. Like Robert Saleh would play golf with the media members, and he would give his phone number away personally to WFAN. Like, I'm not saying you have to be like Bill Belichick to the media, but you don't have to be their friend. Like, th you can be their
Yeah.
best friend, and they still released a hit piece on the Jets on Robert Saleh's birthday. Like, you don't have to be their
Yep.
friend. And they were pressing Aaron Glenn about Aaron Rodgers and all this, and he's like, "I gave you my answer. You can keep trying, but I'm not gonna give you anything." And, one of the reporters said he was trying to make a comparison about a quarterback. He goes, "Well, Bill Parcells." He goes, "I'm not Bill Parcells. I'm Aaron Glenn." So it was just really refreshing to see a coach like take charge like that.
Yeah.
Um, it's just something that's been lacking. I'm excited for this. It's not even like a new era because I don't think this is a rebuild. I think this is a retool. There's players on this team, like we talked about it last episode. Like if you saw Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Brees Hall, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Gwen Williams, CJ Mosley, Hassan Reddick, all these guys in August, you probably think the Jets make the playoffs. Like that's a very good group and you have a good offensive line. I just think they needed some fresh voices in there. And I think that Aaron Glenn, he seems like he's made of the right material, cut from the right cloth. Well, just nothing matters unless you win
I
on the
think so.
field. But, I think it was a good start. So
Yeah. I know people on media like I hear people what people are saying from Chris's response as like how can you not get hyped up for this, and other people are saying, you know, like I've heard this before, I'm not believing anything until I see it, which is also fair. I get that, but if I was a Jets fan and I saw this guy come in and fully just make those comments, I'm with you, Chris. I think this is something different. This is something vibrant. This is something new. This is something with a lot of potential. And yeah, he's got a lot of talent to work with already. So if I'm not saying they go 12-5 the first year, but if they go 500 or right above it, that's a great year in my opinion. I don't know what you think of that, but they could definitely go around that rate. That's just me, in my opinion. What I could see the Jets doing is Aaron Glenn could flip this in a heartbeat if he gets these guys on the same page with his mentality. But like you said, Chris, the first presser is like, first impressions are so important kind of thing, like that kind of saying. You're not just talking to fans and media. You're making a whole statement to that entire organization. You're trying to prove to everybody watching that's not just a fan, not just the media, but the front office, the players, the other coaches already there that might leave or might not, whatever, that I will lead us and we will win together and I will be there for all of you kind of thing. And that's what I think Aaron Glenn did. Is he's a no nonsense guy. He's there to go play football and work hard and do it right. So if I'm you, Chris, like you just said, I would be ecstatic as well. I think the Jets obviously have a little work to do, similar to the Giants. Obviously, like there's just work to do everywhere. But Aaron Glenn seems like the guy to do it.
I also think that, um, oh, I lost my train of thought. I had a good point to make, but, I don't know. I just think that, shoot, man, what was I going to say? Just to your
Um,
point, like this is a solid roster. It's not like you're completely starting from ground zero. Oh, I remember now. But I think another important point that was made in the press conference was he wasn't even asked about it. He just got up there and said, there will be questions about Aaron Rodgers, but you have to do what's
yeah,
best for this team and this roster. We're evaluating everyone on the roster. And I think that was the downfall of the Saleh and Douglas era is when they went and got Rodgers, they catered their entire world to him. They brought in Hackett, they signed Lazard, they signed
yeah,
Cobb, they signed all these washed up veterans. Trading for Adams is fine. He's a good player, it was a good move. But that's you can't put one player above the team in a new era. And I know that like Aaron Rodgers is probably one of the best quarterbacks, best quarterbacks maybe to ever play this game. It didn't work.
yeah,
So if he's gonna come back, like everyone has to be on the same page that you are not above anyone on this team. We're all on the same level, and this is my team. If you're Aaron Glenn, this is my team. We're gonna do things my way, and if you're not buying into that, then you're not a part of this team. So I think that was really important
yeah,
to set that out publicly, and then I'm interested to see what goes on
yeah,
behind closed doors when they start having discussions about him coming back, or if he wants to retire, or things of that nature.
yeah. Well, Chris, let me ask you this. How do you feel about the GM, Darren Mogi, now? Like, how do you feel about him with because I think Guillermo had a great press conference as well. He talked about his past with Aaron Glenn and how like what the first thing they talked about and all that stuff. So just what do you like? What do you think of him?
GMs are always really hard to get an actual gauge on because you could say you like a guy and that you like where he came from and the team he came from, but we have no idea like how much influence they had on, you know, the good moves of the team or even the bad moves. Like we just don't
Yeah,
know. It's all speculation. He's a
yeah,
younger guy. He's only 39, which is pretty young for a general manager. I thought he sounded like a really intelligent and assertive person, which I think are
professional.
good qualities to have. Yeah, professional, like you said. I think he was brought here because, Aaron Glenn respects him and they both have that Sean Payton connection. And I think that, that was an easy segue for them to kind of get an understanding of the vision that they want to build for the team. And, they were originally going to bring in Lance Newmark as like a package deal with Aaron Glenn, but Aaron Glenn was probably like, I don't need to be a package deal with this guy. Like, let's hear what other candidates want. I said this to you last week. It seems like Aaron Glenn is like the main figure in that building right now. Some of the coaches that we've seen in the past, like, Bill Belichick or Pete Carroll, were the main figures in that building as far as, personnel and all that stuff. That's what it seems like is going on with Aaron Glenn. I believe in Aaron Glenn's vision. I think Darren Muji does too. So I'll be interested to see, how he goes about building a team because I think the first order of business, other than Aaron Rodgers, is retaining your own players. Like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Brees Hall, Jermaine Johnson, your core players from 2022,
Yeah,
are all getting ready for contract extensions and discussions. So especially Garrett Wilson, like those are big conversations, and you want to
that's what I
keep
was gonna say,
you
Chris.
want to
Yeah,
keep your own players. Like you don't want to have to keep cycling and developing. You want to keep your own guys that are here. And he made a point to bring that up during his portion of the press conference.
yeah. I think I don't know if this is. I don't want to jinx anything. I'm knocking on wood right now. I'm saying I think Aaron Glenn becomes the reason why Garrett Wilson stays. I think that you know Aaron Glenn sees like he Aaron Glenn knows what talent is. Let's not kid ourselves here. Um, Garrett Wilson's talented. He's probably one of the more talented receivers in the league. And any team would kill to trade for him for any of their young quarterback. I heard a lot of rumors about Denver getting him, or maybe yeah, just because they the value that he would have for Bo Nick's development. But you know what I mean is if he comes in, if Aaron Glenn comes into this facility and Wilson's like, "Hey man, I want to help. I want to help. How do I help?" And Aaron goes, "I got you." That's what I see happening. And I think Garrett's gonna be fine as long as they get a comparable quarterback or whatever. The QB situation is the biggest question mark in my opinion because I don't know what happens. Um, because there's a lot of free agency potential there. There's a lot of draft potential in the next couple of years. So I don't know what happens. And Chris, we could talk about that for ages if you want to, but I think that this is going to be an environment where these players that maybe we heard rumors about not wanting to play for the Jets say, you know what, this is a turnaround right here, right now. I want to be here for it, and I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of the team that says I took the Jets, or I helped take the Jets to the playoffs for the first time in what was it like 17 years now or something, or no, like what was it
14 or
15 years?
14 right now.
14 years, 14 years. There you go.
Well,
But
look,
that's
like,
what I mean. I think. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we've already seen as like specifically Sauce Gardner and Jermaine Johnson say that they have business to take care of here. They want to be here for the long haul and turn it around, for the fans
Yeah,
and be a part of that. I think you have to get the buy-in from Garrett Olson and Brees Hall because they've been grossly underutilized in their time here. And you look around the league, like I'm sure Brees Hall, it's a very extreme example, but he sees Saquon go from the Giants to Philly and he rushes for 2,000 yards and takes him to the Super Bowl. Like Brees Hall is not on that level of player, but I still think he's a really good NFL back who could be an All Pro if given the chance. I've said it before. I think he's the
yeah.
best player on their
Well, you could
offense.
other examples. You could use other examples like Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. Like, there's been a
Yeah.
lot of running backs that had the same thing though this offseason.
Yeah, I just think you have to get that buy-in. Not that there is any reason for the Jets to even entertain a Garrett Wilson trade this offseason. Even if he requests one, he has another year under contract, and then the fifth year option, and then the franchise tag if it comes to that. So that's 3 years of control. Like, there's not really, unless someone offers you two first round picks, I wouldn't even pick up the phone. Honestly, I don't think it's worth it because the Jets have had such a hard time drafting and developing talent. I wouldn't move him. But Muji has no alliance
Yeah,
to these guys. He didn't draft any of them. If he thinks that he's getting good value for like a Garrett Wilson, and he might make that move. But if they're truly serious about winning this year and trying to make a push for the playoffs, I don't see a reason why you would trade him.
yeah, I agree with you. Um, do you? I don't know how to put this, Chris. Do you think Aaron Glenn can take the Jets to the Super Bowl?
Well, it's really hard to say like Super Bowl right now because we don't have a clear plan for the
Fine, playoffs.
quarterback. Look, if Aaron Rodgers comes back next year and there's like actual buy-in from him and they get a real offensive coordinator, I don't see why they can't be playing for the playoffs towards the end of the year. The AFC is really good, but the Jets lost 6 one-score games in the fourth quarter. They blew
Yeah,
6 fourth quarter leads. So, like, if they held on to them, they would have won 11 games and been in the playoffs. So, I don't see a reason why that should be an impossible thought. I need to see what happens with
yeah,
quarterback. And, ideally, they keep Rodgers, I guess, and draft someone this year. I don't know who that would be. Maybe a Jackson Dart. But he seems like he's going to be a first round pick now based on the buzz. This
I
this
saw
like
that.
this time last year, no one thought Penix was going to be in the first round, and he ended up going 12. That's just how these things go. But
Ninth. You went ninth.
yeah, nine. Sorry, Knicks won 11 or 12. But
Yep.
I don't. I would like a quarterback to sit and learn under Rodgers, or if that doesn't happen, next offseason, you draft the quarterback, but at some point, Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are gonna bring in their own quarterback. I'd say Rodgers is back.
Yeah,
If he comes back, it's just for 1 more year, that's it, in my opinion.
yeah. I just, I don't want to make it about the Giants right now, but I'm going to compare, like, just in my comparison of what the Giants have been doing for the past year and a half compared to what the Jets are doing right now. You know, Chris, when Dable came in along with Shane, obviously the Bills had a history while they were there of being very successful, making solid additions on offense and defense. So the two of them, in the Giants' eyes, and in my eyes, looked like exactly what you're talking about with Aaron Glenn. I'm not saying this to backfire or anything like that. I'm just saying the points that you made, Chris, of we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, regardless of the coaching tree that somebody comes off of, or the GM that somebody worked for, like the guy that the organization that the guy worked for beforehand that becomes the GM. You know, me and Chris have analyzed Joe Shane for the past 3 years, or Joe Shane's past 3 years, and this was probably the first draft he hit. This past year. But let's not forget he let Barkley walk. He is the one, not the Giants. Joe Shane is the one that let that happen, right? Because me personally, I love Brian Dable. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he's a great offensive minded guy. I think he has potential. But in my opinion, I believe that him and Joe Shane didn't see this the same way. There were a lot of things. I mean, obviously, they both loved Neighbors, which was a great thing. Neighbors was a great addition. But if I'm Dable, I don't think I. Dable did not want to get rid of Barkley that badly, and neither did John Mara. I mean, everybody knows the infamous clip of him saying, "I'm gonna have a really tough time sleeping at night if Barkley is in a Philly uniform." And obviously, we all have nightmares every single night, and it's terrible. But you can't like I've learned, Chris, now. I mean, Chris, you've already known this as well, being a Jets fan. We've learned to there are certain things that these coaches and GMs, these new coaches and new GMs that come into these organizations specifically have to do in order to win the fans over. And from my eyes, Chris, is Dable gave me that little fired up action. We went to the playoffs the first year. It was a great, energizing thing, and we all collapsed, which is yeah, that whole thing. It all broke down. Whatever. But if you look at that one year, there was hope. There's hope there. That's what I feel with Aaron Glenn here. I'm not saying that it's going to be a one and done year. I'm saying Aaron Glenn feels like a dynasty coach, a franchise coach, a guy that will be with this organization for a long time. That's what I believe. And I think that you guys hit a diamond, if whatever the phrase is. I don't know what you want to
Diamond
say
in the
about that,
rough.
but diamond in the rough, whatever. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with these stupid metaphors. But I'm saying Aaron Glenn was probably the best coaching candidate of this offseason for sure. And the way he used his words in the press conference, he made the media realize, look, I will answer questions that I want to answer, and I won't answer what I don't want to answer because I don't have the answer right now. Right? He has a plan set in mind. He knows what he's going to be doing for the next half a year or whatever until the season starts. So if I'm you, Chris, and you already said it, if I'm a Jets fan in general, I'm very comfortable. I'm a lot more, maybe not like super hyped, but I'm gonna say this guy has a chance to do something great. I'm gonna sit and watch him and be hopeful.
Look, I mean, these are the guys that you want to work out, right? Like
Yeah,
he's he was drafted by the Jets. He got his professional career, his administrative career started with the Jets. Like, you don't want to see this guy fail here. You don't want him to have to be fired in 3 to 4 years. And even he said, "Yeah, I hope this is my last stop." Like, he wants to coach here for the next, 15
yeah,
years and go off into retirement. I think that's what everyone wants. So he certainly believes. Him and Darren Muji were extremely confident talking about that we're going to win games. They seem to believe it. They got to get the buy-in from the players and everyone in that building, and then once we see it on the field, that's when all the fans are going to buy in.
yeah. Uh, Absolutely, Chris. Before we end here, you want any final comments on anything before I wrap it up?
No, I mean, we got an exciting, we kind of got a little break because we got the Pro Bowl coming up, and no one really cares about that because it's a joke,
Yeah,
honestly. Yeah,
I
well,
do want to talk about that though. I do want to talk about like Pro Bowl snubs and stuff like that, which would be interesting.
yeah, I mean, it's not the same as what it used to be, but we have some time here where we
Yeah,
can kind of dive into some pre-off-season topics. I think I want to make one quick point about the draft before we wrap up. I've been thinking about the draft a lot because every day you go online and you see more takes about Shador Sanders and Jackson Dart and Cam Ward. I know that this
yeah,
draft is absent of that blue chip talent, but I almost think that makes it a little more interesting in the sense that these teams are going to have to work extremely hard to find talent, and we'll see who's really good at evaluating because it's not like some of the drafts of the past, like 2020, where you couldn't go wrong with, Burrow, Tua, Herbert, uh,
yeah.
Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, like those loaded draft classes, they're not boring, but like they're easy to see how it's going to play out in January. Right now, we have no clue.
Right.
Honestly, we have no clue how this draft is
Yeah,
going to go. So I think this
yeah.
will be an interesting
I
draft
love that
cycle.
though. I love that. I know Chris, you love that too because I think it makes our lives more interesting too, and even for fans. I mean, obviously it's a stressful time, but especially if you have a history of not picking the more obvious guy, I guess you could say, in the draft, and you have to sit there stressed on the couch as a fan. But yeah, Chris and I will definitely run up a couple of mock drafts for you guys. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. Chris and I are in a dynasty league. We're going back and forth right now. Chris really wants Kenneth Walker from me. That's a whole other conversation we could have. He's begging for it every time, every day.
I've been nonstop
And I'm
texting this guy, so
yeah, we have. I haven't really given
not
him the.
he's not budging.
I've been making him frustrated.
He's not
I'm not
budging.
budging, but we'll see what happens. But we got a lot to talk about in the next couple weeks, even the off season, Super Bowl coming up. Thank you everybody for listening. We always appreciate you guys. Um, Take care. We'll see you next episode.